What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another video. If you don't know who I am, that means you're new. I'm Mark. What's good with y'all? Go check out my other videos. Check them out. Check them out. But first, stay on this one. I think this is a pretty important topic here. So, recently, I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with the news, but recently there's been more attacks on churches, Christian churches, than we would all like to see. But that's more so besides the point. It's becoming much more prevalent to, attack churches and attack Christians for some reason. So, if you are of different faith, this video, I guess you can apply to, whatever place of worship you go to, whether it be a synagogue, a mosque, whatever. However, generally speaking, I am going to be speaking on a lot of the recent attacks that have happened at Christian churches. So, moving on, you read the title, you saw the thumbnail. Should you conceal carry at church? So, for short, yes. Yes. Yeah. But people people have some arguments against it, and some of the arguments are more so philosophical than they are from a logical standpoint. Now, I want to talk about a couple of different things on here besides just recent attacks that have happened. We could, for example, for one of the attacks, we can talk about the stabbing of Bishop back in English. We can talk about the stabbing of Bishop Mar Emanuel. We can talk about the attacks that have recently happened. I believe it was in Moscow, where some Muslims, I believe they were from Dagestan, went and started attacking a church. I could be mistaken on the placing of, the location of where it happened. However, I'm pretty sure it was in that region. My whole point, though, is I'm going to get to all that in a little bit. A lot of people have this argument against concealed carrying at church because they're like, oh, well, it's God's house. Why would you need a weapon in God's house? And I completely understand that point that they're making, and I respect it. And, I respect it in a way. They're putting their faith entirely in God. I respect that. However, my problem with that full argument is, to me, it doesn't genuinely seem like that's 100% what it is. Now, who am I to judge other people? I hear you there. However, what I can also say is that, generally speaking, a lot of people who I hear make that argument, against concealed carrying in churches are overall against firearms as a whole. So I don't believe that those people really make a fair argument. I don't believe that their opinion is valid. There's no validity to their opinion whatsoever when it comes to that. So, moving on from that, let me just go ahead and, debunk that little idea right there. There have been several attacks on churches where concealed carriers have stopped the attack. If I'm not mistaken, one of the most known church attacks was the revival of the 357 SIG round, where I can't remember the man's name for the life of me. I'm very bad with names, guys. Please remember that. If you check all throughout all my other videos, I'm very bad with names. But so man domed a mass shooter with his 357 SIG. Where did the shooting take place? At church. Overall, while yes, church is God's house, I'm still aware of the fact that there are people who, for some reason, hate God and hate Christ and hate Christians to such a level that they will try to attack the house of God, whether it be mentally, verbally, or in this case, very much so physically. And it's something that we should be prepared for. Truth be told, I recommend concealed carrying everywhere you go. So just the aspect of that, I don't see why that would change because it's church. And some people would even argue that, it's easier to conceal carry in, say, a church because of how many people there are. Usually churches are decently crowded, so it's not like, you're just going to be the only person in a lone circle, in the area. That's just not usually what happens. And not to mention, if you are a traditional person, you dress up for church. And honestly, that's something I like that I'm seeing among my generation, is that the practicing Christians and Catholics are being more traditional and dressing up for church. I like that. But, if you were like that, and you were more traditional and you dress up for church, I'm willing to bet you money it's going to be pretty easy for you to conceal carry, considering you're probably going to be wearing a blazer. You're going to be wearing some sort of jacket over top of a nice button up shirt. So concealed carrying isn't going to be very difficult for you when it comes to carrying at church. So just the aspect of the difficulty of it, that's you can't make that argument. People will make the argument opposite to that, actually. But besides the point, we have seen too many attacks on churches, on Christians, where, unfortunately speaking, if somebody was just concealed carrying, it would have been over with much quicker. Or better yet, we have seen them where people have concealed carried and stopped the threat. I understand the aspect of not wanting to carry a gun in God's house. I understand the aspect of putting your full faith in God, and if I die, I'm going to see Christ. I'm good. I understand that aspect, and believe me, I hear you there. However, I also am the kind of person to say, hey, if it's not my time to go and there's something I could have, prevented it, and maybe I did something that I ran the clock out too early, I would much rather be around a little bit longer, considering I have a wife. All in all, it's a very difficult thing to talk about. We've been seeing, once again, much more attacks on churches as a whole than you really want to see, and you got to understand, I'm not advocating for any form of attack on any other place of worship or anything along those lines. However, it kind of speaks volumes to me when people are attacking the place of worship for the religion that preaches forgiveness. And that's what stands out to me the most. And this is why I truthfully recommend carrying while you're at church. Because while Christ also preached forgiveness, and please remember, guys, I am not a scripture machine. However, what I can say is, and I am paraphrasing, Christ did tell his disciples to arm up. That there wasn't oh yeah, well, let's never have anything to protect ourselves. If I'm not mistaken, Christ literally told his disciples to sell their clothes and take the money to buy a sword if need be. Why would that be different for us? I understand we're not, the 12 disciples necessarily, but we still do have a right to defend ourselves. Some people would argue, oh, well, thou shalt not kill. The word for that actually originated from the ancient Hebrew language, which it meant murder, an unjust killing. So when you break it down, nothing morally speaking is wrong with concealed carrying at church, in my opinion. Truthfully speaking, if you go to church and you are a firearm owner and you're a concealed carrier and you're not concealed carrying at church, especially seeing all the attacks that have been happening recently at churches and just people and on Christians, I think you're doing a disservice to your church and to your fellow brother or sister in Christ. And while some people might look at me and be like, Mark, this is a little too religiously of a video for me. Hey, I mean, you clicked on the video reading the title that said, should you conceal carry at church? So let's keep going on. When it comes to these attacks, I've seen some of them be, once again, like with Bishop Marmari Emanuel, stabbings. When I've seen explosives or explosions. There we are. I've seen people walking up to pastors, pulling out a gun on them, trying to shoot them. I mean, you see a lot of crazy stuff here. And while it is God's house, we still do have to understand that, unfortunately, evil lurks on this planet. And we have to be very much so prepared for it. And what's the best way to do that is to conceal carry. Whether some people want to admit it or not, if I'm at church, I would much rather be able to see a mass shooter and I draw my gun. Even if I die, I can say that I died doing the right thing, trying to stop somebody who was attacking my church. You see what I mean? In the end, I guess the long answer for, the question I asked earlier of should you conceal carry at church is, if you really care about, beyond just yourself, if you care about protecting your religion and you see somebody attacking it, you're going to want to defend it. And that's just a logical sense. The same way that, when attacks on mosques happen, Muslims there throwing fits. The same way that, the same way attacks on synagogues happen, the Jewish people are throwing fits. If an attack is going to happen in the house of God, we should be able to defend it. And the best way to do that is to conceal carry. So yes, you should conceal carry at church. Now, I know I kind of been going in circles here. However, this is a topic that it really, really upsets me deep down to talk about because, one, in the end, this is something that nobody wants to see or admit or truthfully even speak about. I don't know why that is. I mean, I understand it from, the aspect of a Christian who is like, yo, I'm really not happy with everything that's happening. However, it seems that all of these attacks have been suppressed. And, it's funny because it's mostly people who are against Christianity as well who are advocating against firearm ownership. So, I thought it'd be important to, remind you guys that, yes, it is morally correct to conceal carry at church. It is 100% correct. And as a matter of fact, once again, if I'm not mistaken, Christ literally told his disciples to arm up with the most advanced weapon of their time, which was a sword. Now, with that being said, I think that about wraps up for this video. I can tell I'm going back in circles again. Y'all make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that bell. When you hit that bell, hit all in. Whether or not you agree with me on this particular aspect, and if you don't agree with me, I want a real reason why, not just, oh, it's the house of God, you shouldn't need to carry a gun. Because guess what? While yes, it is the house of God, evil is still in the world, and there is evil that wants to attack the house of God and the people of God. With that being said, I think that about wraps up for this video. As I said, I can tell that I'm already drawing myself back into the rants, but if you do not agree with me, I want to know why. Comment it down below. With that being said, y'all make sure to stay legal, stay safe, stay dangerous. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.